Hey everybody, I wanted to go ahead and jump into Tableau and provide you with a little bit of an overview here to get us started. When we install Tableau, this is the screen that we see first. It's kind of our general launch screen. Yours is going to look a little different if this is your first time in Tableau because you don't have all these files in here. I work with this quite a bit, so I'll have several files that typically load in. The first thing I need to tell Tableau is what kind of data I want to connect to and where that data is at. So if I look down the left-hand side of my screen, you can see I've got several different options here. Most commonly is what we're going to work with is Excel data, but I can just as easily connect to several other file types. And then I can also connect out to various cloud services as well, or databases. So as you can see, I can easily connect to a MySQL, an Oracle, even a Redshift database. I just simply need the credentials to get into that. So usually an IP address, a username, and a password is what I need. And a lot of industry will do that rather than a lot of connecting to Excel files. But once you're connected, Tableau functions the same way. So we're going to go ahead and say we're going to connect with Excel. So if I navigate out, I want to find a file. I've posted this in Canvas, so you have access to this as well if you want to follow along with me. So I'm going to say OK, and it's going to load my data set for me. So if I look down here, I can see here's my columns and here's my rows. A couple of things that Tableau does that's kind of useful, as you can see up here at the top, is putting some icons in. And is what Tableau is trying to do is take a guess at what kind of data type or data attribute this is. So obviously my first column, I've got a lot of names. It puts an ABC up there. Next to it, dropped doses. It's numeric. So that's why we see the number sign, the hashtag, the pound sign, whatever you want to call it. As we make our way to the right, these two, city and state, are what we call geospatial coordinates. All right. So that's anything I can use to pinpoint your location. In some cases, it's very, very specific. It can go all the way down to latitude and longitude. And if you're familiar with latitude and longitude, you know that some of those numbers can be incredibly large, or it can be as vague as simply a continent. All right. So entirely up to us how we use these. But every once in a while, Tableau will classify incorrectly. And if it does, I can simply click the drop down and I can manipulate this however I need to essentially change it if necessary. Okay. You can also see I have the option to rename. All right. This allows us to do what we call aliasing. Okay. So sometimes if I get a data set in from somewhere, especially older databases, they had character limits on how big a specific field could be. All right. So, for example, one of the databases I used to work with all the time that tracked patient information, they would track encounters. Okay. An encounter is just simply a visit, how many times you came to the doctor. Okay. The database in its native form did not support enough text to allow the developers to name that field encounter. So they abbreviated it ENCTR. All right. If you're familiar with that data set, it's pretty easy to look at that and go, I know what you're talking about. But if you're not familiar with it, it makes things a little more complicated. So here's an example where we could rename that. Okay. So everything looks good. This is kind of my gut check here. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to click sheet 1. And this is going to take me into my view of Tableau. Okay. This is kind of my workspace, if you will. And if you notice, it very much has a look and feel that I kind of call Excel-esque, if you will. All right. Meaning down at the bottom, I've got sheets and some icons I'll talk about in a minute. Up along the top, I've got, some of my standard menus that are very similar to a lot of the other tools that we use. Okay. So the best way to do this is just kind of get started. And for those of you that have never worked with Tableau or any visualization software before, think back to when you took BIA 1800 and you got to the section where you were making graphs and charts in Excel. We're doing the same thing here, only it's just a little bit more robust. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is I want to make just a basic chart. So I'm going to come up here to the left. I'm going to select a nurse. And then I'm going to multiple select and do select my drop doses. Okay. Depending on if you're a Mac or a PC user, it'll either be a control select or a command select. So depending on which one you're using, it should look like this though, where you have multiple selected. Okay. So now I'm going to come over here to my show me menu. And what Tableau has done is says, here's my common chart types. Okay. So based on the data that you have selected, nurse, and number of dropped doses. The ones that are highlighted that have color in them, these are all the different chart types that Tableau could create for me with what I've selected. Now, the grayed out ones, Tableau is saying, you're not giving me enough data to go do this. Okay? And that's okay. Tableau has also put a border around the one that it thinks is most applicable. Okay. Might not be, but it's giving you a guess. Okay. So in this instance, we're going to go ahead and select what we call the default. So there we go. We've got a chart that's been created that now shows us the given nurse and the number of doses they've dropped. Okay. So I'm going to manipulate this a little bit. Before I do, I want to get this menu out of my way. So I'm going to come up here and click show me and get that to toggle away. And now I want to think about, is this chart telling me exactly what I need to see in the most clearest sense? Okay. So take a minute and look at it and start to think, is there anything that I could change or manipulate in this chart to be a little more explanatory of what's going on? So let me give you the use case. This is a situation where in the hospital environment, if a nurse is trying to administer a medication to a patient, okay, hand them a pill, okay, every once in a while in that exchange, the medication gets dropped on the ground, okay? We don't pick it up and dust it off. We dispose of that, okay? Well, if you've been following anything that's been going on in the news lately, you know, there's a huge market, a legal market for prescription medications for recreational use. So years ago, I was on a project where I was asked to help develop a better way to track if a nurse drops a dose. Prior to us coming in with a technology solution, they were simply using a clipboard and writing it down, okay? Not everyone wrote it down. The clipboard wasn't audited very often, so it made it very difficult to catch who was dropping doses, okay? If a nurse is dropping a lot of doses, that might indicate that there's some type of problem, okay? Either it's theft, it could be that given nurse has a problem with substance abuse. It could be they just simply need to be trained a little bit better on how to administer medications. Okay. So if I look at this chart in its native form, at this point, if you're keeping track, I've made about 3 clicks, right? And I can now see how many nurses have dropped doses. And if I put my mouse over a given bar, it will say how many they've dropped. So for Dave, it's 250. For Alan, it's 8. For Betty, it's 3. So take a look at this chart for a second. How is this organized? This chart is organized and sorted alphabetically, isn't it? Is that the most conducive? As a business leader, how do I want to make decisions on this? Well, really what I want to do is make a decision based on who's dropping the most doses, right? So in order to do that, I need to resort my chart. So this is real easy to do. If I come down here to where it says drop doses and mouse over that, you'll see I get this little icon that appears. If I click it once, it will sort for me highest to lowest, descending. If I click it again, it will sort ascending, lowest to highest. If I click it a third time, it removes the sort and goes back to alphabetical. Okay. So as a business leader, which view is most useful to me? I'm going to argue this one, a descending view. Put my highest offender on top. Okay. So we've made one change to improve the chart. What else should we do? As a business leader, if I take a glance at this chart, say I print this out. Can you tell me with precision how many doses Nancy has dropped? Well, if I come down here to my y-axis, we can see that Nancy is somewhere in between 10 and 20. I don't know how many. If I put my mouse over, I see it's 15. But if I print this, or if this is in a PowerPoint presentation, that's lost, isn't it? So I want to expand this a little bit more and add what I call more granularity, okay? So I would like to see at the end of each one of these bars, I would like to see it display for me how many doses that nurse has dropped. So to do that, I'm going to leverage this space right here called the marks card, all right? In order to do that, I decide that I want a label, all right? So if I mouse over, it'll tell me label, drag dimensions or measures here, or click for more options. So since I want to display the number of drop doses as a label, I'm going to come over here, click and drag dropped doses on top of label and let go. And there you can see my graph automatically adjusted for that. And now I get that precision, right? I can see, okay, Nancy has in fact dropped 15. All right. So now our layout has improved, right? let's continue on. Let's continue to refine this chart a little bit more. And let's shift our focus and let's look at color. Okay, so I'm looking at the color and I can see that Tableau has defaulted and displayed all of my bars in blue. Okay, this is what I will affectionately refer to all semester as Tableau default blue. Okay, if you turn in homework that is using Tableau default blue, I will deduct you in the color space because we need to think about how this applies. Okay, so how do I want to orient my color? Well, does the color blue typically have a positive or negative connotation to it? Hopefully we all agree it's positive. Is it positive that Dave is dropping 250 doses? No, of course not. So what would be a different color scheme we could think about? Okay, I really like kind of the stoplight mentality of more of like a red green. Okay, red stop, bad, green good, go. Okay, so let's create our chart to resemble that. So what do I want to drive color off of? I want to drive it off of the number of drop doses. So once again, I'm going to come over to drop doses, click and drag, and I'm going to put it on this time the color square or the color card. Now look what happened. Tableau said, okay, you want color, you got it, but I still like that color blue. So I'm going to keep it at blue for you, but I'm going to give you different gradients of blue. All right. I'm not a fan of that. So I want to change my color scheme. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to click on the color card. And I'm simply going to say edit colors. And it gives me this screen that pops up. And it asks me what palette I want to use. So I'm going to come down here and I really like the red-green diverging. I'll say, okay. Now what I like about this is I can click apply and watch it make the change while I'm looking at it. So look what Tableau has done. Now I've got my green and red, okay, but it's showing my highest offender is green. So it's backwards, right? So I just simply want to come in here, click reversed, say apply, and look what happens. Okay. So I'll say okay to this. So now I've got my color in place. All right. So now I want to clean this up just a little bit more, and I want to go with a descriptive name. So I don't want to show this to my boss and have it say sheet 1, do I? So I'm going to double click on this, and I'm going to change the name to dropped doses. And I'm going to call this is what we call a horizontal bar chart. Okay. I apply. Okay. And then I also want to come down here to my sheet. I want to right click on this, say rename. And just like Excel, I'm going to call this horizontal bar. All right. One thing I forgot to do up here, I'm going to double click in this. I'm going to highlight my text. This works just like Word. I'm going to bump this up to a 20-point font. I'm going to bold it and I'm going to center it. All right, now I'll click apply. That looks a lot better. Say okay. All right, so I got my chart. I've added color. I've added title. I've sorted it. It looks a lot better, doesn't it? But now I want to make some business decisions off of this data. Okay, so I'm still bothered by the fact that I've got one bar at the top, Dave, 250 drop doses, and then I drop off substantially down to the next person, which is 20. Okay. So as a business leader, it's all about being actionable against the data, right? So I take this into the nursing supervisor or the chief nursing officer. He or she looks at it and says, whoa, what's going on with Dave? Well, I don't know, but he reported he dropped 250 doses last month. Okay. So we pull Dave in, and Dave admits that he'd been stealing medications and selling them in the illegal marketplace. So Dave is fired. Okay, he no longer works here, and he's going to have a hard time working as a nurse, period. Probably going to lose his license. Okay, so we've made that decision. I want to remove Dave from my view. So I'm going to come up here on my bar, simply going to right click, and I'm going to come down here to where it says exclude. And look what happened. Dave vanished from my data, and my chart automatically resized itself in redistributed color. Okay, it's a lot better, right? Now I've got my color variance, and I see a little bit better spread, 20 down to 1. Okay. So this is, like I said, a horizontal bar chart. I'll be honest, this is still a struggle to get industry to adopt this notion that the chart is horizontal. Okay. So we want to show them another option. So I want to make another one, but make it a vertical bar chart. In other words, I just want to orient my bars up and down instead of left to right. Well, there's no sense in recreating the wheel. So we're going to come over here to our tab down at the bottom, right click, and we're going to say duplicate. And now you see I've got horizontal bar 2. All right. Now, what I want to do to make this change is pretty straightforward. I'm going to come up here to the top. I've got this little icon that says swap rows and columns. Boom. There is my vertical bar chart. All right. So a lot easier than starting from scratch, isn't it? So I just need to change a few things. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to say vertical bar chart. Okay. Come down here to the bottom, rename that vertical bar, and I'm done. Okay. So now I can show my leadership 2 different charts and say, which one do you like better? All right. But I'm not done yet. I want to give them a couple more options. So I'm going to right click on vertical bar chart and I'm going to duplicate again. This one's going to be a little different. Probably a chart I'm going to guess you maybe have not seen before, and that's okay. I'm going to come down here to this chart in the bottom right that's called a packed bubble. I select that, and what I get now is a bubble sized based on the number of doses a given user has dropped. All right. Now you can see it did something different with my color that I don't like. It assigned everybody a unique color, which adds no value to me. So to get rid of color, I just simply come up here, click and drag it down here. Color goes away. Everybody turns back to blue. So what I want to do is I want to fix my color, and I want to say drop doses, drop it to color. And since I've already used that red-green diverging color scale, it pulled that in for me. I could just as easily change it if I wanted to right here. All right. Now, once again, I got the same problem. If I mouse over, it tells me how many they dropped. If this ends up in a PowerPoint slideshow or printed out for my boss, they can't see it. So I want to put a label in each of these bubbles that tells me how many doses we dropped. I'm going to do it the same way. Drop doses into the label. Okay. So a couple more changes. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say packed bubble. Do the same down here. Rename packed bubble. Okay, so that's good. Now I want to create another chart. So I'm going to right click one more time. I'm going to say duplicate. Now I'm going to get really creative here. And let's see. In fact, let's just start over. I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to delete it. Start a new chart. I'm going to show you the different way to do this here. All right, so I want to use the nurse's name. I want to use the state that they reside in and the number of drop doses. And when I do that, you come over here to the show me menu and you see that some of my maps are illuminated now. Okay. So again, I've given Tableau some geospatial coordinates, if you will, city, state, that sort of thing. So if I click this, it will create my map for me. Okay. I'm going to get rid of that show me menu. I really don't like how this is displaying, so I'm actually going to pull nurse off of here so that I get one map. All right. And so you can see if I mouse over in Missouri, it tells me how many doses total were dropped in Missouri, how many in Kansas, and how many in Texas. All right. Now, I want to use that same color scheme, so I'm going to go drop doses to color. And this time it did not apply my color scheme for me. So I'm going to say edit colors, and I'm going to go red, green, diverging. And remember, I need to reverse that. Say apply. There we go. So you can see I got a red dot for Missouri, a green dot for Kansas, and Illinois is a real small green dot. All right. One more thing I want to do is I want to take the number of drop doses and put it on my label. Okay. So now I can see all of this state start to pop out. Right. Now, let's rename this. I'm going to name this map. If you remember, we did, to be consistent, we did a 20-point font, bold and centered. Good. I'll come down here, right click, change my sheet name to map. Okay, so I've created 5 charts that use the same data and displays it slightly differently. Which one is better? You have your opinions, I have mine, but most importantly, what does the boss think? Right. So how I like to present this is in what we call a dashboard. So I'm going to come over here to where you see got this little icon that looks like a window pane, and it says new dashboard. So I'm going to click it. Over here on the left, if I mouse over, here's my 4 charts. Okay. So what I want to do is I'm going to click and drag each one of these over into my dashboard workspace. All right. In doing that, when I drop my first chart, you can see what happens. I get the chart. It looks great. And then I've got this legend over here. All right. In this case, since we labeled the chart, we use good colors. I don't really need this legend to show up. So I'm just going to click the X, make it go away. I'm going to drag my vertical bar chart and I'm going to put it over here on the right. Again, I'm going to be in this constant battle of getting rid of my legends. Now I'm going to take my packed bubble. I'm going to bring it down here in the lower right. And I'm going to go with a quadrant view here. So I want my map right here. All right. Got a couple more legends that showed up. Don't really need them. Going to make them go away. I got some chart space back. All right. Now, here's what I want to kind of clean up here real quick. A couple things I need to do. The first thing I need to do is I want a title for my dashboard. So I'm going to go up to the dashboard menu and I'm going to say show title. And here I'm going to say dropped dose dashboard. Okay. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. I'm going to go with the 26-point font, bold and centered, apply, and okay. All right, now I want to even things up a little bit. So you see right here, I've got all this white space. White space is not good. It distracts away from our theme. So each one of my charts has what's called a container. You see how I click on them and they illuminate. So I'm going to start here and I'm going to right click. I'm going to come down to fit and I'm going to say entire view. So what I'm telling Tableau to do is use every bit of space I've given you and fill it with chart, just like that. I'm not going to see as much difference with these others because that's already using entire view. This one is not. So you see my bars shift a little bit, and map, we might get a little bit out of this. Nope, map does not let us do that. Be sure here. Yeah, it's going to automatically fit that for us. So, all right. So there's our dashboard. I can rename the dashboard as well. So I'll name that drop dose. All right. So if you refer to the homework, the first homework assignment I'm asking you to do is essentially what we just did here. Okay. So you're going to do the same thing, only you're going to find your own data set. You cannot use this drop dose data set. Now, this last part is very important, so pay attention to this. So I don't want anyone losing points on an assignment for this. When you're done, what you need to do is a couple things. You need to go to the dashboard menu and you need to say export image. Okay. And the reason we do that is that gives us a good, clean screenshot of our dashboard. So that's the first thing that you need to create is a exported image of your dashboard. All right. So I'll click save. The other thing I need to do is I need to go File, Save As, and this is really important. A lot of people get this wrong. Okay. So I'm going to go Homework 1, name it. The last thing you need to do is come down here and flip this to Tableau Packaged Workbook or .twbx. Okay. The reason I'm having you do that is when you do this, you create a packaged workbook. It also gives me the data that you used. Okay. So that way, when I go to grade your homework, I open this up, boom, it's all there ready to go. All right. So works pretty well that way. I'm going to drop this into, actually, I'm going to go to my folder for the class and I'm going to say save. And just like that, we're done. So that's kind of your overview to get you started with Tableau. So feel free to reference back to this. I look forward to seeing what you come up with on the homework.